This is an international podcast transmission. Is anyone out there? If you're listening, you've reached the No Fixed Agenda podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to No Fixed Agenda presented by Bubs Naturals. Got caught with Omar in his laughing fit about it being sweaty.
You said we couldn't start there, and you start there, dude.
I know. I couldn't do this. Damn it. All right, let's keep it clean.
Let's keep it clean. This is important. We're talking about education today.
Education. So we are in the midst of doing a few education podcasts over the next month or so, or month and a half, and just talking to all different levels of education. Now that we've concluded those and we're putting those together, it's really cool to go back and hear some of these conversations that we've had and how a lot of the conversation is similar in some regard, and what some of the teachers and administrators actually say that they wish that things would kind of change or shift a little bit to help out with the students. You know, this episode is really special for me though, because my niece and nephew were in town, and my niece jumped on the podcast to help out with the interview process. She's starting at Illinois State University this year. She just moved in yesterday, and she's going into psychology that'll eventually lead into student psychology. Yeah. And so it was really cool to hear her point of view from a student who just graduated high school.
And if someone's going to try to get into the career of education, and somebody
who wants to try and get into it. And she talks about the one-on-one aspect versus 30, 40 people being in the room. And I thought that was quite interesting that she had those takes on it, and was able to ask Laura Foster, who is our teacher who was in for this episode. She was actually able to ask Laura about some of that stuff. And it was really kind of cool to see the
dynamic between the two of them, versus Laura has 20 plus years of education and somebody's first coming into the educational system. And we jokingly said she's either going to walk away from this podcast going, I don't want to do this, or she's on fire.
Super excited.
Super excited. Yeah.
So it was fun to be a part of that and see it. And I'm happy that she happened to be here at that same time that we were doing that. It was really why I wanted to set that episode up while she was here. So, cool. But I think you guys will have fun with it. We are talking about education. We do try and keep it as light as possible. We don't want to be political in any side of things, right? And
it's important to remember the reason why we did these series, that Jeff and I wanted to do this series, is we were interviewing entrepreneurs, and the topic of education just came up over and over and over and over again, right? And how the educational system was potentially even failing some of our youth today. And I think Jeff and I both came to this conclusion as a result of interviewing all these professionals in the educational system, either people that go into college or people that have years and years and years and decades of experience in the education system. But I think it opened our eyes big time, Dave. There was so much to go over, but I think this particular podcast that we recorded with Laura and your niece was very special to you, I think, for sure.
Yeah, it was fun. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I know she really did when she was here.
She was on fire. You can see the passion in her eyes for sure.
It'll be fun. She said she can't wait to listen to this. So I hope you guys enjoy it just as much as we had recording it. So, all right, guys,
let's kick it off.
The No Fixed Agenda podcast is brought to you by Bubs Naturals. Their mission is simple: live better, longer. Bubs helps fuel people to reach their maximum human potential through supplements sourced from nature's highest quality ingredients, all by giving 10% of profits back to charity. That's right, people, 10% back to charity. Learn more about their NSF for Sport certified collagen peptides and electrolyte drink mix at bubsnaturals.com. This one we're talking with Laura Foster. We're going to talk some education today.
Yeah.
Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, on top of that, we've got my niece is here with us to chat as well. She's visiting in town from Illinois. She is going into, and Lennon, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, school psychology. Is that correct?
I'm going into psychology now, and then I'm getting a master's in school psych.
There you go. So, this was a great opportunity for her to
have a conversation with the teacher now and maybe ask some questions that if anything pops up and she knows this, if anything pops up that she wants to ask you about this, then we figure we can run with that as well. But we figured we should talk some education today.
Okay.
Just education. We'll keep it casual as much as we possibly.
Keep it casual as much as possible. We have made some comments about education before, and I want to preface the fact that I do not, any comment that I make, because that's what I know from me going to school back in the 80s and 90s. Yeah. And I don't have any kids, so I don't know what the school process is now. So sometimes I make the dumbest comments about stuff. So I'm just prefacing the fact that there might be some dumb comments coming out of me. Yeah.
Again.
And Laura, I don't want you to hate me for it.
No.
Hey, we've already established that I'm the special one here, all right?
Gen X versus millennials versus Gen Z. There's a big discrepancy, I think, when it comes to what we all went through as far as school goes. So again, I talk from the Gen X side of things. So
I think he's underselling it a little bit when it comes to saying that the conversation of education has come up on several episodes. Pretty much every episode we've gotten into when it comes to like business, even mental health. We've had a conversation about school. So when we were writing down notes about what the future episodes we wanted to record, this was one of them. And it just was just a reoccurring theme of how, in my case, I felt like the school system failed. And I raised 6 children. And I think the school system not necessarily failed my children because it was something that as a parent I had to do. Right. But even then, I only did those things because I was like, wow, I struggled here. Right. I would love to be able to get in the conversation of, from a teacher's perspective, what that looks like for you and helping our audience and Jeff and I understand what are the struggles you guys have? What are some of the biggest challenges in regards to not just curriculum, but overall development of children in the grade that you're working in? And then just see where the conversation goes from there, right?
Yeah. Laura, just to give bio of who you are.
We're not going to ask her the Tinder profile.
Well, trying to be nice about it. She said,
I know Si's our boy, bro.
I would like to know as Laura's business Tinder profile is.
Thank you.
I would like to know what's going on with that.
Yeah.
What would your business Tinder profile say?
Yeah, like what do you?
And I know you're like the rest of us.
Think about like
we don't get the Tinder thing. We get that.
I don't understand this whole. I've never even been on that.
Yeah, neither of us, right? Apparently, so Tinder's a dating app, and we'll educate you real quick. Like,
I think she knows what Tinder is.
Yeah, she knows what it is, but she doesn't know I didn't know how it worked. Right? Somebody else had to tell me how to do this, bro, because I've never been on the platform. So the profile is basically, hey, what is your main catch line? You know, and then what are your qualifications? And how did you get into education? So just give us an understanding of who you are.
Got it.
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yes.
Yeah. I guess you can think of it as if you're being introduced at a school and they asked you 20-second blurb about you.
About you.
What would that blurb be?
Got it.
You got 20 seconds.
Okay. All right. Education. I've been in it for 25 years and it was something I got into because it failed me. It failed my brother. And my brother was diagnosed with ADHD and he was the one they stuck in the back of the classroom and really didn't know how to engage him and really make education exciting and engaging and something that he was drawn to. So that was hard. And for me, I honestly can't name one teacher that really stood out. And that one teacher was hard. And he really was the one that made me love writing. But besides that, nothing else stands out. And that's pretty sad to me. So I wanted to be that teacher that stood out. So when I went to college, because my grandpa had muscular dystrophy and I had my brother who had ADHD, teaching children with special needs was my passion and my go-to. So I received both my teaching credentials from Cal State San Marcos and my master's degree. And from there, I have taught children with special needs for 8 years at Kristen McAuliffe. Luckily, I had the guidance of a ton of amazing mentors there. I was so blessed with that school during that time period. They taught me a lot as a beginning teacher. Then I was, you're a teacher in special ed. You don't get out of special ed.
Yeah.
But I was able to ask my principal if I could open up my horizon and go into general ed and then work with all populations of students. And that has been my blessing. So I was able to go into second grade, then fifth grade, and fifth grade is where I've landed for, a long time now. I don't know how many years I can count it, but I love my fifth graders.
We're not going to date yourself.
I know.
It's fine.
Seriously. I just had my 50th birthday and
she just dated herself, right? Yeah.
I was trying to be kind.
She's a strong, amazing, beautiful athlete, bro. She's okay with being 50 because she don't look a day over 25, bro.
For this ADHD thing and the fact of where that stands now, because again, I go back from, I only know what I grew up with, right? And like you, we grew up Gen X, we grew up in that same time frame. And with the way they used to treat ADHD and some of the other challenge, dyslexia and all that stuff, like how does that adjusted now in the school system? What do they do now to help students out?
I think back in the time they didn't know what they didn't know. And now, we just have a lot of people passionate about it and wanting to make it a learning space where everyone feels safe, supported, and they belong. And for any child with special needs, now we have people who have research-based data that shows us what works, and we can use that in our classroom. And yes, sometimes we'll go to a training and we'll be bombarded with all this information, but it takes us as colleagues coming together and reminding each other, remember this great practice, remember this work, going into other colleague classrooms and watching them do it and just learning from each other, I think has been a great thing. Observation is another biggie. Finding out what are their triggers, really getting to know them. Once again, building that classroom where they feel safe and like you really know their go-to things. So if they're starting to have a meltdown, well, you know how to approach them. You're not going to go with a loud voice to them and all right, it's like more, hey, I see something's going on here. Let me know when you're ready to talk. Knowing how to approach them, knowing also their learning styles in my classroom. I have tall desks. Hey, if they don't want to sit, they don't have to sit. We're not going to sit in a chair for 20 minutes nonstop and not having this. Well, I can't do that. Asking kids to do things that I can't even do would be ridiculous. Letting them move around and letting them have those brain breaks. We just learned so much information that I think also there's that fear factor in so many of them that they have that amygdala activated so many times. The second a police car pulls up behind us and we hear the RFR goes, and our hands get all sweaty and our learning shuts down for 20 minutes after that happens. So if we
Wait, why?
Really?
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So if in a classroom, we activate that with a child and we put them in that fearful state, they're done learning for 20 minutes. That's so sad.
And you got to think, people, you talked about ADHD, right? I'm ADHD. And she's absolutely right. When it comes to steering the headlights for me, when I get super nervous or whatever. Right. And so and you and I talked about fears, but whenever I come across something, I either got to do it off the bat or I won't do it at all. And so it's interesting when you talk about learning styles. I love that. And the reason why is because nobody understood that growing up, how the special ed, dude. I had an IEP and all this other stuff. So I love it when you're asking these questions about ADHD. But none of that stuff existed back in the day. It was like, sit down and it was like the worst thing that you could tell me to do to sit down. And so like when you say learning styles, if you see a kid that's ADHD versus a kid that's not, how do you deal with that? And you 100% of your students are special ed, or are you in your classroom? Do you have a variety of people that are not and people that are, and how do you address that?
So last year I had 35. I had one student who came in from the most severe class and fourth, fifth art classroom, and was in our classroom. She was in room 24. Mm-hmm. And a variety of other students from SSTs to AEPs to students who are on watch for some pretty gnarly mental issues that they were dealing with.
Before you get into that, can you explain to our audience what an SST and IEP is?
Yeah. So an SST is a student study team. So we come together as a team, which is wonderful because back in the day, we're all by ourselves. We're like, oh, we got to figure this all out. But hey, why not bring all these people together with great ideas and say, how can we support this child? Here's what's happening. Let's pull some ideas together. And then they have a tool that goes with them from not only elementary school to middle school to high school and we'll support them in their learning education. But that's general ed, where an IEP goes into special ed. And that's where you pull all the assessments together, you create an IEP. And T-team SST will come together, talk about what are our next steps. So then they might get a 504. So a 504 would be for a child, like for ADHD would be an example. And they just need some changes in the classroom that will support them. And then that paperwork will go with them and support them along the way, where an IEP would be special ed. But the student study team comes together and talks about a specific child that really just needs a team to come together and problem solve. Yeah. You're not all alone.
In the SST, you go into if a particular has like a mental health issue, is that something separate as well?
We're still going to come together, but the next step will be at the team decides what the next steps would be.
Got it. I love the collaborative aspect of things, but you were going into if we have that particular scenario, and I interrupted you. If you have that particular scenario, you have a couple students that are at SST, a couple students that are IEP, and you have 35 people in the class. What is that like for you, and how do you address that?
Thank goodness. I, once again, have had so many mentors in my life that have blessed me with a ton of just tools, I would say. So the biggest thing I would say for me and my whole classroom feel is what I call the home court advantage. For example, when we walk into your gym, Omar, that's my home court. I know when I walk into your gym, people are going to know my name. They're going to support me. They're going to feel like I belong. They're going to high five. So in the beginning of the school year, that's what we create as our home court advantage. Every single child will say, what makes you feel safe? What makes you feel supported? What makes you feel like you belong? And they tell us, we go through this. That's like big, just for weeks. We decide what is that going to be, because that's going to support us for the rest of the year. So if something happens and we're, let's say, in our friendship circle and someone laughs at someone about what they say, we're like, hey, we said that into the support thing. We're not going to laugh at people unless it's something that really is funny.
Right.
That's something we agreed on as a team here. So for me, it's interesting because building that foundation, no matter who you are in the classroom, you are going to support that child. So if another child, for example, last year was having a really rough week, a lot going on in this kiddo's life. And he melted down big time, huge in the classroom. The kids in the class were the ones that just brought it all together. It wasn't me. It was them.
Oh, that's cool.
And that's
cool.
That's good. That's cool.
You don't want me to be the leader and all that. You want them to feel empowered.
You want the community to do it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's pretty cool.
What the gym would do.
Yeah.
Like we will come together and support somebody.
Yeah.
And that's what we need. So it's not me doing it. It's the classroom doing it. So they know if a child's having difficulty with reading or with math. So having them be the ones that are like, hey, can I show you another way to do that? Not me being the one doing that, but having them have some ownership and not only their learning, but in the fact that this is our classroom and we are all accountable for each other here in the learning process. So that's what I find has been a biggie. And then just having colleagues along the way that you can go to when you're having your rough days, or if you have a child that really just you're forgetting something or you don't know something, but you have just that go-to team that you can brainstorm with.
Yeah, I do want to bring that around too, though. I think it also goes to show the type of teacher that you are, though, because you're the one that helps bring those kids together at the same time. Like you talked about, some teachers just are just there. I hate to say that, but they're not well liked. They're not as respected. Students just don't get along with them. And I think that's where it becomes this individualized deal where a teacher like yourself helps bring those students together. They understand that it's a teamwork scenario in your classroom, right? And I think that says a lot about the individual and the teacher that you are in this situation.
Agreed. Because you said something to me that really resonated in my own personal experience. Mr. Espinosa is the one teacher that I remember. There's actually two. And one of them's really good and one of them's really bad. And the one that was really bad, I was a violent child. And so I wanted to hurt him.
Yeah.
And then one that was really good that when you said home court advantage, I wrote that down as he created that. Mr. Espinosa did. And he got to a point where I was such a troubled child that his name is Forrester, not Boston. Mr. Forrester, he was my 6th grade teacher, and he just made me feel like I was dumb. And I knew I couldn't read. I was struggling reading in 6th grade. And so thank God technology came up to what it was. I would have been in trouble, bro. But he would make me read in front of the classes knowing I couldn't read. And so and my dad just died, bro. I'm like, dude, I'm like this. We're like, I would, if he wasn't a bigger man, dude, I think I would have went at him. Yeah. Anyway, and so he would make me do that. Right. And I'm like, you're a fucking turd. Right. And so I just tapped out from 5th, 6th grade, dude. I just tapped out. I just go through it. Right. And this is back when I think either was it Bush that did No Kid Left Behind. Mr. Forrester was that person. But when I got into high school is when I experienced Mr. Espinosa. And I only had a short stint in high school before I got expelled. And Mr. Espinosa, he was that homeboy from the hood that made me feel like I was at home. He knew where I came from because he came from the same space. And so when you said home court advantage, dude, that's Mr. Espinosa. And I want you to realize, Laura, what you're doing for your kids right now. I want to for you cry right now, because you're going to put some child that may have a huge disadvantage and you're changing their lives. You are legitimately planting the seed as long as you keep doing what you're doing and doing that home court advantage. And God bless the guy that your mentors that helped you get there, because you're doing some amazing work. Mr. Espinosa, I'm 47 years old and I still remember Mr. Espinosa, right? And he, ironically, the one caught me when I got expelled. And usually any other teacher, man, he would be the guy that'd be like, he just looked at me and goes, you know what you got to do. And I didn't do what he thought I was going to do. I had gotten into a fight and I hurt somebody really bad. And he looked at me and he goes, man, he goes, you just did that. And he goes, you know what you got to do. And I ran. And then I came back and they found me and all that other stuff. But Mr. Espinosa came full circle after I got caught and I was getting expelled. And he came back and said, hey, dude, it's not over yet. For me, that was the end of my school career. I was like, school's not for me. I'm done. But Mr. Espinosa, even full circle, even after it was already too late, right? He couldn't change my educational career. He couldn't change anything else because of my own actions, right? But he did come full circle and reminded me, hey, it ain't over yet. As you are creating a home court advantage, this home court advantage concept is something very powerful. And just keep doing that, right? You keep doing it, because I guarantee you're going to have a bunch of Omars and Laura Fosters and all these other people that are just going through life. Because that's where I think the school system needs to pick up at, right? They're preparing young adults for life. That's it. And so that's the reoccurring theme that keeps on coming up. So go back to where we were at. You were talking about, you have all these kids, you have these IEPs. What are some of the struggles that you face what is the number one struggle you face as a teacher now versus back then? You've been in education for 20 plus years. So I'm sure it's changed.
Yeah, it's changed.
Right.
The pendulum just keeps going back and forth. Yeah, I have to say behaviors.
Okay.
Yeah. And
what do you mean by behaviors?
we have a lot of behaviors going on right now.
And from the student
perspective.
Yeah.
But thank goodness we have been able to land colleges on our campus, legal counselors on our campus, because they can come to school with things that happen at home and they need like pretty much immediate help at that point.
How many psychologists are there on staff usually at a school?
We'll have a school counselor, and then we'll have a psychologist who usually does a lot of the assessments, but then they can pull in and work with children who really need that time with them. But we'll have homework counseling. So we have a support staff there for students. So if you have one that walks the door or after recess having a hard time, you can call them and have them go spend some time with them, which is really nice now.
So one counselor, one psychologist usually per class or per
it depends on the school,
really?
The size of the school that you have.
And California is social work and psychologists. Are they two different positions, or are they the same?
That's a good question. Actually, I don't know. I know Palmer counseling would be like our Palmer counselors. I guess it would be social work too.
In Illinois, they have 3 different positions. You have counselors, school psych, and then social work. And social work, they're the happy middle. they do like some assessments, but it's more like mental and like emotional based. Psych is more of the like math, reading, based on like those abilities.
Like they'll do the assessments for the IEPs.
Yeah.
A psychologist will do that?
Yeah.
I would think it was the other way around.
Really depends on the district in Illinois, but for the most part, the psychologists, they do like the reading and the math. And that's when you pick up on like ADHD or like autism, because when I did my internship with the school psych, she trained me to do like autism assessments on kids. And it was pretty much like all that. It was play-based, but like you were looking for how well they could read, how well they could make up a story, So
What about observations in the classroom? They go in on the playground and watch them.
Yeah, for the most part, I didn't see a lot of observations just because I was only there for an hour and a half a day. So like I couldn't really see all of that. But they had like different types of assessments, and they did this one called the 30-second assessment, where they would sit in a classroom for 2-ish hours and they would look like down at a desk for 15 seconds and they would look up at the kid that they're assessing. And then they would look at a peer that was like the same age, same gender, and compare the two. And then they mark if they were on task or like off task. And they just like use that stats to see if they were fixing or if they were following like their IEP, or if they needed to like slightly change something. So if they needed more fidgets or like more hands-on like activities.
What made you want to go to school for this?
I had this really good teacher.
It's a reoccurring thing there. Yo, let's go.
I had this really great teacher. Her name's Margarita DeVita, and I love her. I actually get coffee with her sometimes.
There you go. I love that.
But I had her sophomore year in high school, and I remember she pulled pretty much everybody that she thought would be good. And she was like, hey, I have this program. It's like the education pathway. So if you're interested in going through education, like you should do it. Like you should do this internship. You also get out PE. And I signed up so fast. I only took one PE class, and it was like half PE, half home ec.
Oh my God.
I just had this teacher that was like, hey, I think you'd be interested in this. And at the time, I wasn't really interested in school psychology. It was mainly like hospital psych and medical, that part of it. But then through this pathway, it was like, oh, wow. I didn't even know this existed. And I had so much fun. And I did that internship for 2 years. And it was just overall a really great experience. And I remember when like kids in the hallway, when they were like, oh, I want to be a teacher. I'm like, have you heard of that education pathway? Hard sell this path. Because I want to say she started it in 2019. She did 1 year of it and then COVID hit and it completely shook up everything. So compared to the junior and senior year of that pathway, it was like a huge switch. And like, I went from a level 1 to level 2. So that was a huge change. But some of the things that I was hearing that the like level 1s did, it was just their first year. It was, wow, I didn't get to do that. But also not a lot of people like knew about it then. And because I think in total, my junior year, there was 30 of us. And then my senior year, at least for first semester, I think there was like 35 level 1s. It completely just changed. Like,
so you fell in love with school psych.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you fall in love with it?
I don't know. Because like whenever you think of teaching, you're like, oh, a classroom full of 30 people and you have to do this and you have to be like that authoritative like person. And I know teaching changed a lot, so you don't have to be that person, but it just freaked me out that like for hours at a day, you just have attention of 30 people. And it just, whenever I would do assessment, so it was like I was giving my full attention to one kid. And like, I felt like that was better for them because they're in a classroom with 30 people. And it's like, you have to split so much time between the kids and like, they don't really get one-on-one time with the teacher unless like they truly need it. And so I don't know. I thought it was just like a special way to show support I just liked it. It was fun.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you have a heart to want to help people. I think anything we decide to do as adults, I think, and I'm going to say this across the board, nothing against any of our youth. I think so much of our youth soft plays and waste time, and self included, right? I was that kid. But I think kids, and I tell this to my kids all the time, try everything. It doesn't matter if you think you don't like it, try it, get into it. Like you do this internship, you got into it and you're like, oh, I didn't even know school psych existed. I'm giving you a hard time about not taking a PE class, but overall,
still the best choice.
I'm okay with disagreeing, but that action of you just jumping into this program is what opened the door because you took action. And I think a lot of our youth sits back and either looking at their screens or playing video games or not taking action. And then I come across people, I start coaching people at 20, 30, 40 years old. And I think that is a failure of could be parenting, it could be the school system, it could be anything. But kudos to you for getting into this program and skipping out on PE, because now you didn't even know school psych existed. And now you're every time you're talking about school psych, your face is lit up. And so you found something that you really enjoyed. And that is the dig that I have. If you're young out there and you're listening to this podcast, just go do something. You will find out real quick, and you can change courses in your 20s. Changing courses in your 20s is a hell of a lot easier than changing courses in your 40s and 50s is all I'm saying, because then you have all this other responsibility. Usually by the 20s, 30s, by the 30s, 40s and 50s, you have kids, rent, all these other things. In your teens and 20s, people wasted partying and having fun, which that's what I did. But if I would have taken it and applied things and just went out and tried things.
Jesse Eisler's Instagram, and I think he made that same exact comment of just go fuck shit up.
Go fuck shit up. Yeah.
Go figure it out. You don't have to be like career bound at 21 years old.
Right.
Go out and experience life. Go out and experience what's out there.
Yeah.
And then it'll come to you when you get into your 30s and your 40s. That's when you're destined to get into the career bound stuff. But when you're in your 20s, go have fun. Go figure out what's good for you and what.
But when you would say go fuck it up, right? And people take that as I'm gonna go party, you know.
I'm not shotgun. We're not. We're not talking literal. We're just
go try stuff.
Go try stuff.
Go do things.
Go travel. Go do stuff. I think that's one of those things that I wish when we were growing up, especially in the Midwest, like you're not really taught a lot of that stuff.
Right.
When you're coming from that part of the country, it's okay. You get done with college. What are you going to do for a job?
Yeah.
When are you going to get married? When are you going to do this? And they don't, excuse me, they don't really lean into the fact that, listen, you're still young. Go out and travel. I wish that was the case when I was growing up, because I would have loved to have done more of that when I was just out of college, just to get into it. Now, granted, I got married right away out of college, and it was one of those things where I still had the opportunity that I could have traveled and done all that stuff, and I wish I would have. So I'm glad that more of that information is out there now.
Yeah.
That people should be doing that stuff and enjoying life a little bit more before they get into the career side.
You're touching on a topic that I wanted to ask you, Laura, about. Jeff has all these harebrained ideas when it comes to racing. And what if we did this? And what if we did that? And what was the High Rocks thing that he said? I got some hypotheticals or something like that. He went off on a tangent about.
You can listen into that episode if you want to hear my tangent.
Here's my education tangent. Yeah. All right. It's not as bad. It's not as bad. I think. And so when you talked about special ed and IEPs and all this other stuff, you mentioned something that I made a note of. Getting up and knowing when they needed to take a break, when they didn't need to sit down. And so going off of that thought process, I think school systems are messing up. And this is my wishful thinking that I feel like, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like by the time I was in junior high, I had an idea of the person I would be, but nobody encouraged me to do that. Nobody said, be bold, go mess things up. Go try things, go do this. And how do I know? Why do I think that? When I was in junior high, the first time I was ever exposed to doing things with my hands was in a wood shop. And I was like, dude, I really like doing wood. I really like working with my hands. And and it was like something interesting that I wish I know this now I'm 47 years old. I know this, that I like working with my hands. I know I like fixing things. I know I like helping people. And I think school systems are failing our youth because I don't know if they're encouraging that now, right? Are we looking at kids and going, hey, this kid from a psychological perspective is going, he loves problem solving, or he does not like problem solving. He really likes to just work with his hands. Is there programs in the school systems now that encourage people to pick a path in their education, like high school? And I think, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because so many of I know kids like, oh, I got to take calculus. My kids have to take calculus, right? And I'm like, when are they ever going to use calculus? When are they ever going to have to, you know what I'm saying? If they're trying to be a doctor, then yes, go dissect a pig and do all those things. But if they have zero desire to do, that's where I lost it in my school, but other issues. But for me, I was like, dude, I really like working with my hands. Let me keep on doing wood shop. Can I learn the business of wood shop? Can I learn the business of this? Is there programs out there that you know of that exist in that?
I know it depends on what district you're in, what school you're in. It's definitely not all across the board when it comes to education and where you live and what you receive.
Right.
But I've heard phenomenal things at some schools that they have that pathway. They have those vocational skills that the students are able to build upon, which is beautiful. And I think that's where we should go. Like my brother, I told you, school was really not his place, but he got out of school and he is just a phenomenal business owner now in construction. He makes more money than me. He's just rocking it.
Yeah.
So he needed vocational skills. And I think that there's something to be said about that and finding pathways for students. And they can do that and have that passion, just that excitement to go to school. Like I used to have a robotics class pre-COVID and the kids, some of my girls were like, we didn't think we'd like to build robots, but we love robots now.
That's cool.
We build more robots. That's that engagement and that just ownership of coming to school and saying, yeah, I'm going to be able, like, I'm garden. I'm going to get to garden today, where I didn't even want to get my hands dirty before, but now I can get my hands dirty. We take kids to camp and they learn the beauty of the outdoors. And maybe that's something that they'll find passion for. They get the little, in elementary school, they get the little tidbits, like we'll do genius projects, TED Talks, passion projects.
How does, I guess this is to this, what you're saying right now, because I'm looking at the trade school aspect of it from continued education, right? Because a lot of people now are going more towards trade schools and doing some of this stuff. Is that one of those things, like when you're talking to your students about things that they could be doing later on down the road? You said, like, I love robotics. We love going out and gardening. Are those things that you're telling kids, yes, there is trade schools and explaining the trade school aspect of it versus your traditional going to university and all that stuff?
Oh, absolutely.
So is that some of the education aspect that you're telling the
Career
students?
or college, both. It's what you're passionate about and what you're going to love to do, because you're only going to build from there. I mean, if you are made to go do something and you're stuck in this box, it's just going to be so sad. And that's not what we want. We want them to explore and to find out really and truly what are they going to look forward to doing. I love going, I have hard days at work, and you guys have seen me. I come and cry at the gym. Oh my gosh, it was so hard. But I love what I do. And I just want the students to continue to do that. The fact you are so excited to go and be in psychology and work one-on-one with kids, she's going to make a difference by doing that because she's passionate about it. And that's really what we need.
You talked about your passion and why you became a teacher, Laura. And I've got freaking chills talking about this right now, but you said the school system failed your brother. Yet here your brother is. He's a successful entrepreneur, has his own construction business, and is killing it, right? How do you think, and you don't have to get political or anything like that when you answer the question, but how do you think the school system failed him?
They didn't know what they didn't know. I think they really just were on that pendulum where this is the way, this is what you do. And we didn't have people, unfortunately, battling it out to figure it out then. Or maybe they just didn't like I keep wanting to say that they didn't know, because I don't want to blame anybody. I think it's just the fact of trying to come together the best we can. And those educators that are passionate about it, I keep saying that word, but like they want to be the ones that see the change happening in the classroom. They want those awesome moments. And that's what we are constantly striving for. So if you see a child that's bored in the classroom, just sitting there, that's not okay. We need to do something about that. And come to
on top of that, I think that just the education of the educator is even more powerful nowadays. Like there's so much more information out there nowadays to teachers versus back in the 80s when we didn't really, obviously we didn't have the internet. We didn't have computers. We didn't have all this quick information for teachers and educators to tack into. So I can see how that adjusts. And I think this comes into what I'm curious about now and the big talking point is AI. How does AI and some of that technology fit into it, or does it fit into anything that you are doing with your classroom or within because you're in Oceanside school district, right?
Yeah.
So we'll just talk about Oceanside School District at this point. Does AI fit into how they want education to be helped out or take it away from? We don't want AI to be included in classrooms, right? Because you can look at it in both ways.
Absolutely.
It's a very helpful tool and it's a very hurtful tool to some degree. So
the ethics behind it.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
So that simplifies my question. So is there something that Oceanside School District looks at from that perspective that they ask you not to do or to do?
I don't know if it's not to do or what to do. It's more suggestions and saying, hey, this is still pretty new for us. Like it's coming along. Like we're trying to figure out what to do, but using it more as a tool. And yes, we're having to change up our assessments and all of that because the kids can, just go on and make their own essays and stuff. But it's cool because it's made us be more creative. And then the tasks that the students have to do are tasks that we never would have thought of before, which I love tasks for kids because it's that productive struggle.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we all know that's where our synapses in our brain grows when we get that struggle. So it's changing the task a bit more for them and for us as educators. But I think it's a good thing. Technology it's here. That's where we're at. And absolutely teachers are using it to create, we can make our own quizzes, our own tests that are just for our class and what we're teaching at that point and what level of depth and complexity we want it to be. We can create that. It's definitely a tool, but at the same point, it's something that we're having to figure out. So
I've used it just to see what I can do with it. But there was one teacher and she accused me of using ChatGPT on a huge essay and I didn't. And she tanked my grade. She gave me a 50% on that essay. Because I wasn't the best student in her class. She just completely tanked my grade for that. And I remember I emailed her first and I was like, hey, why did I get a 50 on this? And then she was like, oh, because you plagiarized, you used ChatGPT and this and that. And then I called up my smart friends. And so I just gave them my sources. I gave them the part that she was accusing of because it was only one sentence that she was calling me out. And they looked at my sources, looked at my essay, saw that 1, I cited it. 2, I reworded it. And 3, it was 2 words that were the same between my essay and the source. And they were like, yeah, this is absolutely unfair. So then I took it to my counselor and I was like, hey, can you do something for me? And she was like, of course. And then she eventually regraded it. I got a 68 on it, but I passed the class with a C. There you go. A win's a win. Yep.
Yeah. I think I talked about technology and how it helped me with all my learning disabilities, speak to text, spell check, all those things. And when Google came around, this is when Google first came about, I was so mad because I was already out of the school system. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it was rough. I think now the introduction of AI into the school system is going to create I hope that it creates an environment where people can actually use it as a tool and not so much as it creates laziness if people allow it, or it creates a tool where it actually can bridge the gap for people that have disabilities.
And it can be collaborative. There's just so many great things you can do with technology. So it's tapping into that for us.
Yeah. I think that's huge. And I think it's going to be interesting for us to see, or for as we continue to talk about education and how the importance of AI or other technical tools will either make us smarter or.
I just want to date myself really quick, and I don't mind dating myself. When I was going to high school, we had to learn when we were learning how to you learn how to type, right? Like we were doing it on typewriters.
I was saying, yeah, it's a typewriter.
Or word, I guess it was the word processor at that point.
Yeah.
Right? Not so much.
I use the typewriter still, dude.
So we were in
And
the
you're older
process.
than me.
So
I'm the oldest.
we had just got, it was mostly typewriters. We had just gotten a couple word processors, but it was one of those things we talk about technology and stuff. And it's amazing to see, because now it's computers are given to students, if I'm not mistaken, right? Just to help them out.
One-on-one.
And I think that's great that schools are doing that nowadays. Back in the day, there was nothing. With no Google.
For reminder, baby.
Exactly. You had to print everything out. You had to do any research. You had to spend hours and hours in the library.
We just dated ourselves, dude.
I'm okay with it.
I'm having a moment over here.
I like talking Gen X. I think we should do an episode about Gen X all day, just because so it's nostalgia based and we can talk our language.
I think Gen X had it the best, has the best, because we came out of this. We know what it is to struggle, and now we don't have to struggle as much anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but
Learning how to type on a typewriter is
Like, you made a mistake.
It sucks. Yeah, it sucks.
oh, the whiteout, dude.
how they teach kids to type now is you're at a desktop and you're type. There's special websites for it now because obviously there is, but teachers will take like a cover the keyboard. So you have to memorize it. And so you're just staring at a screen, just trying to find like the G key and you're like, where is it? Right.
They did that back in typewriting.
Really?
They made us cover keyboards as well. Yeah. I want to go back to bridging the gap. Oh my gosh, I got to collect myself here. I want to go back to bridging the gap between your teacher. You've been in the system for 20 plus years. Do you still see a gap? You got into the system. You became a teacher because you're passionate about it. We go back to talking about passion. And I think some of the greatest professionals in whatever field it is, whether they be doctors, coaches, teachers, and it comes from a place of passion every single time. The ones that just got into it because they were worried about how big is the paycheck. They don't. Those are the people that probably should be finding something that they really are passionate about, because they'll be happier, changing and impacting the world so much more. Now, because you're so passionate about it, where do you think the school system today could get better at?
Getting the students engaged, creating a classroom and curriculum that is meaningful to them. I know we always start a lesson with prior knowledge and a hook into the lesson and all of that. But yeah, just getting the students excited to learn. And I know other schools have curriculum that is different than other schools. Unfortunately, like I said, it's not equitable, definitely. There's one where it's like this whole year project that these kids do the coolest things, and this school has it and the school doesn't have that program.
Do you know how they decide, or isn't that's above your thing? That's above your thing like that.
And a part of me thinks that some of the behaviors we're seeing is because kids are bored. They're being shoved all this information. It's not meaningful to them. They don't understand how they're going to apply it into the real world, where it's got to be. I try every single time I do a lesson to make that be something that they understand. All right, we are learning this today because this is where it's going to be meaningful for you. This is the why behind why we're learning it. So they understand that. But I think a lot of them, even with the why, they're like, oh my goodness.
This is not for me.
This is.
Yeah.
And where we could change the task up, in my mind, they're still learning the same thing, but the task behind it is engaging. And then you have kids where time just flies by. And I love days like that, where I love this part of the curriculum and I can't wait to teach it, because I know the kids are going to be the ones where recess time comes and they're like, do we have to go to recess? Because we want to keep doing this.
That's
what I love, are those moments in the classroom, or when we get just a conversation happening where it's a a conversation that is meaningful. And these kids are just like, boom, I'm standing back and just watching it go. And they're just
Flow state.
oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Or a math lesson where they're like, wow, you know what? This is something I think I'm going to use later on in life. I'm so glad I learned this today. And then they're connecting with technology and the tasks that we have created. It's not just, this is math. It's writing, it's math, it's reading, it's social studies, it's community building, it's social skills, it's everything all together. They don't know they're learning all of that. But I think we need more of those kind of times of learning, because I know I appreciate that when I'm getting that, especially on a professional development day, when I'm like, oh my goodness, am I ever going to use this in classroom versus one where I'm like, okay, I need to hear more from this person. I want to learn more from them. I love what I'm doing in here. I can apply this into real life. If I've been in that situation and I'm asking my students to be in that situation, like I want it to be a win. I want them, if I know I'd be bored, I don't want them sitting there bored. So we'll try our best, but my best is not good enough. And I know it's not good enough. And I know I can constantly do better and be a lifelong learner and make it better. But I would say more of those moments. And I know there's schools where kids get that all day long.
Yeah. And you're pointing out a very important thing that I wanted to talk to you about in this episode, which was just that is you give a kid a hammer for something that he needs a screwdriver for, or you're giving a kid some kind of knowledge that he really doesn't need, or you already put one and one together. I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to do this. And you could tell, I think, from a psychological perspective, at least for me, and my behaviors outburst in school when I was a student, where because I had a lot of psychological issues, I had a lot of trauma, I had a lot of things going on, versus when I got into woodshop, all my traumas went away.
Yep.
Legitimately went away. I wasn't thinking about my traumas. I was like, I got to build a helmet cloth. Heck yeah. I was so proud of it. Right. And I know you don't know how they select the curriculum of things. Do you know how does it get disseminated to you? And it just gets rolled down and this is your turn. Go polish it and go do it.
And what's really sad for a lot of us is that they'll have a new math curriculum, a new reading curriculum, and writing curriculum all at once. So for us to be masters in this whole new 3 different parts of curriculum is ridiculous. Because for us to be masters first with one thing, and you're given this curriculum, that's a lot of sitting down and thinking about what am I going to do and thinking 3 steps ahead and how are you going to engage the student. There's so many steps behind it. So they'll give us 3 in 1 year, and which is challenging, but applying it in the classroom, it just takes time. And it takes talking to other colleagues. And if you know, honestly, I get the feedback from the students.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
I ask them, it's for them. I want to ask them, hey, how did we do today with this? Not only do I have them rate my teaching, but also have them rate their learning. If they're a 1, that means they still need lots of support. A 2, they're getting it. A 3, got it. 4, I can teach it. They'll rate themselves in their own learning, but then they're going to rate me too. All right, how'd that go, everybody? And me, like, how are you feeling about that? It's just that constant reflection, feedback. So then I know next year, all right, I need to tweak this up a little bit more. That lesson did not go so well.
Is that something the school requires you to do, or you're just doing that because of you?
Once again, my colleagues, my mentor teachers, I have learned so much just by being around phenomenal educators.
And I think that is so powerful. I love that your mentors tell you to do that, because you can actually pivot and change and shift things around, and maybe it's approach. But again, if it gets to a point where you get into understanding how to approach things, right? If you ask your students, which is amazing, if you could have it your way in regards to curriculum, how would that be?
Oh my gosh. I was able to go to this one school, I'm not going to say the name, and I did not even know a school like this even existed. It was a school where there are makeries. Do you know what a makery is?
No.
Do you know what a makery is? So you're given a task. And then from that task in the room are all these you would think it's trash. But if not, you use all of these things around the room to create whatever they want you to make. So my girlfriend and I Chelsea and I, when we went to it was a professional development that it was optional to go to. Of course, I'm going to go see a school. But we were told to make something that would move. So you just go around the room, you pull straws, you pull cardboard, you pull glue sticks, you pull your glue gun, whatever is around the room, bottle caps, and you create something that will do that task.
That's cool. Wow.
Okay, so there's that room. Then there was a theater room. where the kids could go and do theater. Every child got music. So there was music for them. There was a CrossFit gym. So look at all these avenues we're getting into. There were learning spaces outside with shade. Imagine that. Just going outside, you know we need our vitamin D. These kids don't need to be stuck inside four walls all day long.
Yeah.
So there were learning spaces outside. They could go and find, if they had a club in mind and they went and presented, that club would be produced. So it was just club. They said it was a Pokemon club. Any club they wanted, they could do that and they could make that happen. But the school just it was teaching the whole child. Like you had that pathway or that avenue or that time in the day where you were able to be creative, collaborative, you were able to problem solve, you were able to, just think outside the box and enjoy going to school. These kids loved going to school. And the coolest thing there that I loved, the kids were the leaders. So the kids on campus had full ownership. They would walk the other adults around, introduce them to what's going on. And they were the ones that would say, hey, you know what? This isn't going on at lunch right now. Can we play some music maybe? Because I think the vibe on during that time would be better if we had that going on.
I know that vibe.
It was just the kids had a lot of ownership at this school too. And there was playtime, the murals on the walls. The kids created all the murals on the walls. But it was very student-centered, meaningful. Kids loved going there. Principal knew their name.
There's two scenarios that make me think that remind me of what she just described at the school. And I have an idea what the school is. I'm not going to say it, but my kids, 3 of my children got taught through immersion programs. So they taught them all 100% in Spanish. Right. And so through the immersion program, it filtered in through another school, which kind of created this environment that you're describing. And I think that's the school you're just talking about, but what do I know? But there's 3 scenarios. One is the show. There's a show called Unlocked, I think it's called. It's on Netflix. And it took a bunch of ex-cons that were in prison. And it basically, they went from a structured program, or 23-1, they said, where they were locked up for 23 hours and then 1 hour. And then they removed that structure and they let the inmate basically run the cell that they were in. Freedom to do
it.
Freedom, right? And it was...
Is this real?
Is this real? It's 100% real.
Up down in Alabama.
And so from a psychological perspective, this thing was amazing, right? Because I'm sitting back going, I was on the edge of my couch just going, dude, this is so good. Suzette's just like bored. But anyway, I was totally intrigued by this show because what the warden still put confinements and restrictions and things in place. But as they developed as a community, with the doors being unlocked 24 hours a day, they started developing structure. They started developing jobs. They're starting, there was younger inmates and older inmates, and they all came together at the end to have this 24-hour of free society, but they were all still in jail. Like they're still in prison, right? They're still convicted for whatever they're convicted for, but it created this environment of growth, of knowledge being exchanged from the younger inmates to the older inmates. It created this environment of structure where they were like, okay, the older guys, okay, we're going to take roles. And they start putting up sign-up sheets because every amenity that they would grant them, it started with just unlocking the door. She was the first one. And then the second was a limited phone call. And then the third one is, here's your food, distributed as you will. And human beings, as humans, we love to be in a community. We like to be surrounded by like-minded individuals. And we will grow as a community a lot faster than being in confines of a structured thing, in my opinion, right? And I think you're describing the environment where I think the school system would benefit from wholeheartedly, because I felt super restricted when I was in school. That is amazing. And I think you're spot on when if I talk to 5 other teachers, I think that's going to be the number one recurring theme on how the school system could actually come back. And the second scenario that I was going to talk about was a post that I saw. I listened to devotionals on YouTube every morning. And so one of them was how it was a rapper, right? And he's just talking about it. He has all his lyrics on it, but he talks about how the school system fails the youth and how the world is changing, to this amazing thing with technology and all these things is just opening up, but the school system's staying the same. And so they get out of the structured school system. Like it's been decades, centuries where the school system looks the same today that it did way back when school was first developed. And that is the second scenario that I think about. That's why we wanted to shoot this podcast to talk about how could the school system be better? If it's a reoccurring thing that we feel like the school system's failing or what can we do, and get people like yourself on the podcast talking about how we can change things and how have it your way and bridging the gap. And I think that we need school. Obviously, we need to learn what we're learning, how we're learning is the biggest issue, right? Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
In regards to Omar and I, we really appreciate all the teachers, the service they provide everybody from elementary all the way up to special ed to college and trade school. It's amazing what you guys do. And even the psychology aspect of it.
Yeah.
We thank you for coming in and just chatting with us.
We thank you for your service.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I hope anybody who's listening in gets something out of it and comes back and listens in. You got any questions? You can always reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Exactly.
And we're going to have continued conversations about education. You guys stay tuned.
Exactly. Laura, Lennon. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, real quick before we leave, are you leaning more into the passion of getting to school systems now? Or you're like, nah, you know what? I'm out.
I'm leaning.
There you go.
Close to it.
There you go. I like that. I like it.
Yes.
Illinois state bound right
There you go, baby.
So, all right, guys. Thank you.
This has been an international podcast transmission of No Fixed Agenda presented by Bubs Naturals. You can rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, or wherever you find your favorite podcast episodes. NFA, over and out.